Please join us for a very special Taps at Twilight Memorial Day concert and tribute. The Rotary Club of St. Simon's Island has arranged a special program to honor the men and women who have fallen in the service of our country, those who have valiantly served and returned, and those who are serving today. Stay tuned. It's all coming up next, right here on Golden Isles TV.
We've been traveling far without a home, but not without a star. Free, all in one and free. We huddle close, hang on to the dream. On the boats and on the planes, they're coming to America. Never looking back again. They're coming to America. Home, don't it seem so far away? Oh, we're traveling light today in the eye of the storm. In the eye of the storm. Home to a new and shining place. Make our bed and say our grace. Freedom light burning warm. Freedom lights burning warm. everywhere around the world. They're coming to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they're coming to America. Got a dream to take them back. They're coming to America, yeah. Got a dream and come to share. They're coming to America, yeah. They're coming to America. 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 Today, 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 they're coming to America. Oh, today, they're coming to America. Today, they're coming to America. Oh, today, my country is a beat. Today, seek land to liberty.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Beth Smith, and I'm president of the Rotary Club of St. Simons Island, Georgia. On behalf of our membership, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 29th annual Taps at Twilight Memorial Day program. The Rotary Club of St. Simons Island has arranged this evening's program to honor the men and women who have fallen in the service of our country, as well those who bravely served and returned, and those who are serving today. This annual tribute began in 1991 as an observance of Memorial Day. This day is set aside by our nation to honor more than 1 million men and women who have died in military service to our country in wars and conflicts dating back to 1775. This is a special day, a day to unite all Americans, as we gather to pay homage to those who have given their lives for our country. Always remember that without their sacrifice, we would not enjoy the freedoms and liberties we have today. And never forget that for every freedom and liberty we have, we too have an ongoing obligation. The Rotary Club of St. Simons Island has created a special tribute to honor our veterans, displayed as a veterans walkway around the flagpole in front of the bandstand here in Neptune Park. If you would like to place a brick to honor a veteran, please contact our club at ssirotary.org. Thank you.
Hold. Ready, cut. Forward, arch. Color guard, hold. Present, colors. Ready, step. Counter march. March. Color line. Hold. Order. Color. Ready. Cut.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. In the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please bow your head with me in prayer. Lord, thank you for your loving hand, guidance, and protection in our country. Thank you for blessing our nation with extraordinary men and women of our armed forces. You gave them the spirit of courage and willingness to give their lives for our country. Lord, our prayers are with them and those that love them. They've always been and will always be our bravest and our finest. Let peace prevail among all nations, O Lord. But if it doesn't, we accept that you have appointed those to accept the call. Be with them, O Lord. Thank you for your goodness to our country in the past, the present, and in the future. May you, the author of liberty, always shine upon our good land and our great people. Amen.
Shout, counter marching all about, and those caissons go rolling along. For it's high, high in the field artillery. Count out the numbers loud and strong. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And wherever you go, you will always know that those caissons go rolling along.
The National Guard has a rich history in supporting our nation and honoring the service and sacrifice of our veterans that have lived and died so that we can all enjoy the freedoms of our nation. Ever since the first muster in 1636, citizen soldiers of every state and territory within our nation have been called upon during hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, winter storms, civil unrest, and now pandemics. It is because of great citizens like you and events like we are celebrating today at Taps at Twilight that putting on a uniform in service to our nation brings pride to ourselves and to our families. Most citizens recognize the National Guard for our support to our state, but are less aware of our storied and proud history in support of our country on foreign soils. During this presentation, you will hear about one of the many stories of bravery by your citizen soldiers. You will learn of the amazing camaraderie and support from all aspects of our military that went into accomplishing the mission and saving the lives of our brothers in arms. It is my hope that at the conclusion of this presentation, you understand the story didn't end when the battle was won and the soldiers that lived walked off the battlefield. That there is no greater purpose than serving our country and no greater pride than honoring those who have died in support of that which we hold dear.
On behalf of Memorial Day Remembrance this week and this weekend, I'd like to take a couple minutes to talk about the 30th Infantry Division and the Presidential Unit Citation. The Presidential Unit Citation is an honor given to units that have done great things for our country. And the 30th Infantry Division in World War II was one of those units. Now, it's taken 75 years for them to get the award, but there's some dedication and hard work by many, we made it happen. After 75 years, they are finally awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, long overdue. 30th Infantry Division is still engaged in protecting the freedoms of America. They are deployed to the Middle East, and our thoughts and prayers are with them as well.
The Battle of Mortain occurred August 6 through August 12, 1944, involving the 30th Infantry Division in Normandy, France. Hitler's plan was to draw several of his best and most experienced panzer or tank divisions from across the front. The goal of these units would be to drive straight through Mortain, and where the 30th would be positioned on August 6, 1944, break through the 30th lines and recapture the seaport at Avranches, and therefore split the Allied forces in two. How was he going to do this? As I said earlier, he gathered his best German panzer or tank divisions that was available to German 7th Army, which encompasses almost 5 divisions. Now, of course, these German divisions by this time were not full strength, but it included some 70,000 of the Germans' best troops from across the front. Hitler was taking a great risk by pulling those troops from in front of Montgomery and also George S. Patton's 3rd Army operating under Bradley's 12th Army Group to the south in order to gather this strong of a force to make this breakthrough to the sea. The 30th would face this onslaught with about between 12 and 15,000 soldiers, give or take the attachments that they would have at the time. Early in the morning of August 7th, with a low fog, the attack is launched. They quickly move into Mortain's center city. They bypass the 314 hill there and the units thereon to move straight into the city center. And it is that time that the staff of the 2nd Battalion 120th, which has most of the units right in the city center and on Hill 314, that staff and the commander, Lieutenant Colonel Hardaway, go into hiding, and they will evade the Germans for the next 24 hours by hiding in the basements of several buildings. It won't be until the morning of August 8th that they are actually captured by the Germans inside the city there. But very quickly, people begin to realize that this is a massive German counterattack, the likes of which no one has seen since the D-Day landings on June 6, 1944. By August 9th, the Germans have isolated all the units on Hill 314 from the 2nd Battalion of the 120th Infantry. But basically 2 commanders have taken control up there at the time, Captain Reynolds Erickson and Lieutenant Ralph Curley. They both have basically 2 company pluses of soldiers up there, and they're commanding what is left of the entire battalion on the hill. And it's on August 9th that Ralph Curley is approached into his position by a white flag of parley or negotiation, and a German SS officer enters the lines escorted by 30th soldiers to Curley, and he asks Curley, compliments Curley first of all on the performance of the soldiers under his command and the stand that they've made there on Hill 314, but lets him know unless that they surrender at that point, that they will attack later that night and they will show them no quarter or will kill all of them. And Curley lets him know in no uncertain terms that they will not surrender, and that they will not surrender until the last bayonet that they have is broken off in their bellies. And then he tells them to get off of his hill. And that is an account that was eyewitnessed by one of our veterans of the 30th, Private Tony Jaber, who's relayed that story to me several times. On August 10th, there are numerous attempts to resupply the isolated soldiers on Hill 314, both by Piper Cub aircraft. The Piper Cub aircraft was a small aircraft that was used by artillery spotters, and they were assigned to the 30th Division. They tried to airdrop supplies to them, but they also tried to spot good places to fire artillery shells that they would use to fire actual supplies into their positions. Most of these efforts were unsuccessful, and probably the worst ones, they needed plasma for soldiers who were wounded on the hill, and they did try to shoot those plasma in artillery shells, and of course most of the plasma was actually broken upon impact. But this was an innovative way to try to supply the soldiers on Hill 314 on August 10th. By August 12th, the 35th Division is moving up from the 30th south here from Barenton. You see the name here on the road to Barenton. They are moving up here to provide relief for the beleaguered soldiers on Hill 314. The 30th continues to use E Company, the 117th, and other task forces, but now adds the 119th to try to help relieve from the north the isolated soldiers there on 314, and in all other areas reinforced by Combat Command B of the 3rd Armored Division and the 12th Infantry Regiment of 4th Infantry Division. The 30th pushes back any advances made by 2nd Panzer Division and the 116th Panzer Division here in the north, and the 30th is in the process of restoring the lines. And by August 12th, Hitler has been convinced to call off his first counteroffensive at Mortain. In early May of 1945, the 30th Infantry Division captured German General Dittmar, who was the German Army's chief propaganda minister. He had access to the highest levels of command of the Nazi high command throughout the entire war. And one of the things he told his 30th Division interrogators was, after the victory at Mortain, we knew all was lost for Germany. It was considered by the Germans to be one of their greatest defeats and led to their ultimate defeat, especially in Europe in 1944 and 1945. In 1947, the Army and those in the Army began to recognize the significance of that battle and the strategic importance it had on the Allied victory in Europe. So several of those officers involved in that, General Lachlan Collins especially, who was the 7th Corps commander and had the 30th attached to him during the Battle of Mortain, input the 30th for the highest honor that any division could be recommended for, the Presidential Unit Citation. That citation, and I'll read some sections from it today, was boarded by a group of Army officers, senior Army officers who are since unnamed, but we do know that it was endorsed by the entire chain of command. General Lawton Collins, the 7th Corps commander, Courtney Hodges, the 1st Army commander, who had been next in charge of the 30th at the time, and then finally the 12th Army Group commander, Omar Bradley himself, who would later become a general of the Army, and only other 5-star general of the United States Army. That report was put together, the citations were put together, and the board reported in 1947 the following about the 30th victory at Mortain. The failure of the 30th Division here at Mortain would have caused a revision of Allied plans second only to a failure at Normandy on D-Day. In comparison, for example, with the defense of Bastogne by the 101st Airborne Division and its attachments, it is believed that the accomplishments of the 30th Division and attachments at Mortain were equally outstanding and deserving. The closing of the Avranches-Mortain corridor would have been probably a greater tactical success for the enemy than the reduction of the Bastogne defenses. By 1951, the Army was engaged in Korea and several other places, and General Collins by that time had become Chief of Staff of the Army, and he made the decision that there would be no more discussions regarding presidential unit citations for World War II divisions. The 30th Division never gave up at Mortain, and the veterans certainly never gave up their dream of seeing that award recommendation fulfilled. So for years after that, time and time again, the World War II veterans of the 30th Infantry Division petitioned their elected congressmen, the Army, and the Department of Defense to try to get the 30th Presidential Unit Citation for Mortain approved. It wasn't until March of 2020, well of 75 years after that battle at Mortain, that that dream finally became a reality. On March 10th, the President of the United States announced it was his intent to have the Army award the Presidential Unit Citation to the 30th Division for its actions at Mortain.
Well, first I'd like to thank everybody for their interest in what ultimately resulted in the Presidential Unit Citation 75 years after the fact finally being awarded. And there's no doubt about it, there's been an awful lot of people that have been very much involved in this effort for quite a number of years. But absolutely none of us can take the credit away from the men who served in Mortain, who actually served in World War II. The fact that they finally got their just recognition is something that we can all celebrate. So eventually things do work. I guess that's the bottom line. We finally got it into the hands of the President of the United States. Since this is the Presidential Unit Citation, that's where it should have ended up anyway. Well, it just so turned out that we had a North Carolina National Guard officer that was just coming in who worked inside the White House, worked at the time for the Chief of Staff of the President, General Kelly. So I posed to our young new lieutenant there. I said, is it possible for me and a couple World War II veterans from Old Hickory to meet the President when he comes off Air Force One and we meet him at the bottom of the plane, bottom of the steps? He made a few phone calls, contacted the right people. Next thing we knew, within a matter of hours, we had the approval, and indeed we were now part of the official welcoming party for President Trump when he arrived in Charlotte some 3 days later. So very, very fast turn of events. Well, unfortunately, a lot of our World War II veterans are getting older to the point that their mobility is questionable. Yeah, but we did have one gentleman who is still very mobile, who happened to live close to Charlotte, a guy by the name of King Kenny. He was a sergeant at Mortain, worked for a tank destroyer unit, and was indeed a Mortain veteran. So who better to make this appeal to the President than King Kenny? So here we go. We're in Charlotte. The day is coming. And as the President came off Air Force One, of course, he stopped. He greeted every one of our congressmen, to include our Lieutenant Governor, Dan Forrest, and eventually made his way to me. I saluted him. I welcomed him to North Carolina, and before I could say anything else, and the President just cut me off and said, you're the World War II veteran. It's an honor to meet you. So my job was done. I gladly stood on the side. King Kenny presented the President the book that had been assembled. They gave the executive summary of all the efforts for the PUC, Presidential Unit Citation for the 30th Infantry Division. The President was grateful, told him, said, thank you very much for the book. He said, please tell me, what do you want me to do with this book? And King Kenny was very, very upfront. He said, I want you to award the Presidential Unit Citation to all the members of the 30th Division for our actions at Mortain. He said, do this not only for myself and for all of us that are still alive, but also for those that are no longer with us, for they indeed had performed miraculous and gallant service at Mortain, saving the Allied war plan at the time. Well, the president looked at it, and about this time, all the North Carolina congressional delegation that had preceded us in line now had formed up behind us, almost like a chorus, overlooking our shoulders, and they're now witnessing and seeing what's going on. And without even having to ask them to jump in, they all automatically did, because they had been involved in this effort for quite a number of years as well. And all of them told the president that indeed, we've been working hard on this, they deserve it, and Mr. President, you need to do this. The president's final reply back to King Kenny, he says, look, he said, I'm going to look at this. He says, as long as I don't see anything in here that I disagree with, I'll do it. And here we are today, celebrating a very late but much deserved recognition on behalf of those men who served on top of Hill 314 in the surrounding areas of Mortain that stopped a very large German counteroffensive aimed at splitting the Allied invasion and to drive a wedge between the Allies, the Americans, and the rest of the Allied forces, and drive all the way to the sea, and could possibly have actually caused the war to drag on for months, if not even for other years. But they did their job. We're proud of them. They are indeed the heroes of Old Hickory. They deserve this, and thanks to President Trump and so many other people, they can finally get their just recognition.
The citation reads as follows. By direction of the Secretary of the Army, the Presidential Unit Citation is awarded to the 30th Infantry Division for extraordinary heroism and action and outstanding performance of duty against armed enemy forces from 6 August 1944 to 12 August 1944 in the vicinity of Mortain, France. On the night of 6 August 1944, following a hasty occupation of positions vacated by a friendly unit, the 30th Infantry Division and sighted units withstood the first of many attacks launched by an aggressive enemy making a desperate attempt to drive to the sea at Avranches to seal off the American penetration and sever the communications of the Third Army. All available personnel, including clerks, messengers, and drivers, were committed against the powerful enemy infantry tank teams that followed closely behind, paralyzing mortar and artillery fire. Frequently, frontline companies, after heavy fighting, were overrun by the numerically superior enemy. Several of them, completely cut off from friendly units, exhibited great gallantry and fortitude against repeated attacks, spurning enemy offers of surrender. It seemed that the almost overwhelming superiority of the foe in both personnel and armor would cause a complete breakthrough, when heroically the attack was stopped. The command immediately began an offensive. Aggressively fighting back, the 30th Infantry Division and sighted units restored its original defensive lines, relieved its isolated elements, and destroyed the opposing hostile forces. Under unceasing enemy fire and often in the face of extreme danger, many individual acts of heroism were performed without regard for personal safety, and the bravery and unswerving devotion of duty to all forces made possible the complete and brilliant victory. Their conduct was in keeping with the highest traditions of 7th Corps, 12th Army Group, and the Army of the United States.
Today, we not only honor the men who died on the Hill, but what they died for, and how we, the soldiers that carry their torch, ensure that they are never forgotten. I hope you've enjoyed today's event. Old Hickory.
The empty chair up against the bar, a cold beer and a purple heart, a picture of a soldier that I never knew. It's just another vacation day for most of us on Memorial Day, but not for that KIA and dress blues. And I got to thinking to myself, well, that's someone's brother, someone's son, a life cut short that just begun, a model soldier, a Marine down to the core. He got the call, he did his part, but the part that breaks my heart, he has to rest in peace on some forgotten shore. And maybe I can do a little more to be an American worth dying for. An ice chest and a fishing pole, a beach blanket and my 8-year-old. He said, "Dad, this is the best day of my life." I took a breath and I said a prayer that he never goes over there. In that moment I felt the weight of the sacrifice. Someone's daughter, someone's son, a life cut short that just begun. I can't go back now to the man I was before. They got the call, they did their part, but the part that breaks my heart, they have to rest in peace on some forgotten shore. And maybe I can do just a little more to be an American worth dying for. Worth dying for. Worth dying for. They got the call, they did their part, but the part that breaks my heart, they have to rest in peace on some God-forsaken shore. Maybe I can do just a little more to be an American worth dying for. Worth dying for. Worth dying for. Empty chair up against the bar, a cold beer and a Purple Heart. Thank you, Sergeant Ryan Ennis.
Harry. Color. Ready. Cut. Out of mark. March. Hold on. Hold. Present. Hold. Ready. Step.
Oh, fall off.
glory of the coming of the Lord. He's trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He has sounded forth the trumpets that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer him. Be jubilant, my feet. Our God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Oh, His truth is marching on.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, through the mountains and the prairies and the ocean filled with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
The fighters were broken, the lines had collapsed. The word that was spoken, previously unspeakable act. Oh, lay down your arms, raise up your hands, and surrender, surrender at last. The order like wildfire burn through the ranks. Each new man that it touched on a new path, and now we can whisper and utter some things. Surrender, oh, surrender at last. All we ever knew was glory and war. Turns out the first one is only meant for us if we left our bones on the battlefield. Our faces back home, frozen in frames of steel next to the flames that never healed. Well, it's strange feeling wounded with a body that's whole. They made sure to close every cut, oh, and to set every bone. But when I asked the healer to return me my soul, she said, hey, that's between you and your God. Besides, we can't return something that now